Sectarianism in South Africa. Now, when you speak about sectarianism, the first thing that needs to be, the first thing that I think should be given attention is the terminology itself. The terminology sectarianism is 200 years old. It was founded by the British colonizers, and it was specifically used. It was specifically used. I say it was specifically used because you find that when you're speaking about Islam in particular, this is where it's dominantly used in, to define the Muslims, etc. And when you look at the same thing that is happening in the Christians, it is not called a sectarian. It's not called, when Christians divide or are divided, they're not called sectarians or sectarianists or whatever. They are called denominations. And this is the same thing. In fact, the Christians have more sects than us. But their sects are not called sectarians. It's not called sectarianism, it's called denominations. So, this tells you a lot, right? It tells you that there is an agenda with the terminology itself. There is not only an agenda, but also the way in which it is manipulated. There's a manipulation going on behind here. Because when you go to the dictionaries, you find that they all give you different definition of sectarianism. Instead, the work of the dictionaries is that when they give you a different definition, you should be understanding the word better. You should have a better understanding of the word itself or the terminology itself. But here, with the different definitions that you find in different dictionaries, an additional dimension is added to the terminology itself. So you don't actually get to understand the terminology better. You actually begin to expand the terminology itself, sectarianism. So, with all these different definitions that are there, I mean, one dictionary is saying this and another dictionary is saying that, I've decided that I will actually just give a summary. I'll just join those definitions and give my own definition, obviously, as to so that we can, we can start. And the definition that I've given to the terminology sectarianism is an act of othering, an act of othering with the intent of discriminating within a group. Now, that in itself was directed with all the different, it's broad enough to accommodate all the different, definitions. Hence, you find that I use the terminology of othering, and I use the terminology of discriminating, and I use the statement of a group. I don't say religion. I think this is a very important definition that I will request my audience keep in mind, because my whole presentation actually is in line with this. An act of othering with the intent of discriminating within a group. Right. There are three types of religious sectarianism. So in this instance, we'll say that group is a religious group, the Muslims, right? So there are three types of religious sectarianism. The first type is political religious sectarianism. The political religious sectarianism. This is a sectarianism that came into being in a religion because of politics. And when I mean politics, I mean power struggle. Clearly, purely power struggle, nothing else, not disagreeing, power struggle. And the most dominant of these, the most common and the most known of this is actually the one that is the only sectarianism that is known, I believe, which is the Shia and Sunni sectarianism, where you find that the Shias will argue that, Ali was supposed to be, radiallahu ta'ala, was supposed to be the Khalifa. Right? And then they will swear all the others. They will say Abu Bakr, they will say Umar, and they will say Uthman, radiallahu ta'ala. Not because they believe there's something wrong necessarily about religion, but they have an issue with the political status quo. So they swear the leaders that began that status quo, or maybe the political leaders. And then there's a response. You find that the Sunnis on the other side said, no, there was nothing wrong with the status quo. Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, I mean, everything went on accordingly. There is no need of fighting and arguing who was supposed to be where and who was not supposed to be where. And from there, they take a stand and say that whoever swears, whoever insults, maybe the Sahaba, then we're going to have a problem with you. And that's where the sectarianism, so this political thing becomes part of a dogma, becomes part of the belief in religion. I'm not using the terminology of Aqidah because I want to actually give a broader understanding by using the English terminology. Because I know when I say Aqidah, people understand something. And when I say dogma, probably you might understand the broader aspect of what I'm trying to say. So that is the political religious sectarianism. And then there is the hermeneutical religious sectarianism. There's the hermeneutical religious sectarianism. This is a sectarianism caused by difference of opinion within a religious faction. Where you find it, so a religious faction, in this instance, I'll make an example, Ahlul Sunnah. So Ahlul Sunnah is a religious faction, and then there is religious differences that happens there, and also in a madhab as well, a school of thought. So for instance, a good example of this is the Shafi and Hanafi difference, where you find that we all acknowledge we're on the same, under the same umbrella, etc. But the differences have a potentiality of actually harming one another, harming each other, discriminating one another. You understand? And also in a madhab, where you find that the people are following the same madhab, but they are differing on the madhab, and that results in them going different ways. And a classical example, in my opinion, is the Deobandi and the Brelwi instance, where you find that they both are Ahlul Sunnah, both are in the Hanafi madhab, and both have two different understanding of the Hanafi madhab. And maybe you can even add the Turkish Hanafi understanding, the Hanafi madhab of understanding by the Turkish. And then the last part, my time, I don't know, I haven't even started. But my last part is actually, the last part of sectarianism is social religious sectarianism. This is actually racism and classism in the name of religion, where you find that discriminating another Muslim is based on ethnicity and is also based on a race, and fatwas are given in this instance. A classical example, you find the tension between the Malay, the Indian, and the black Muslims in South Africa. There is serious tensions happening, and all of them, they are actually racial based. And now they have been given religious connotations. You'll find that others will give fatwas against others, justifying their act of discriminating upon others based on that. So all these types of sectarianism exist or existed in South Africa. Now I'm going to that. I don't know how much time I have. I'm just starting my topic. And then, so the first, okay, so we'll go back to Cape Town and going back to, the first Muslim group, etc., or maybe the first Muslim community. According to Sheikh James Paul Franch, right, the number of Muslims recorded to have arrived in the Cape between 1655 and 1808 was 62,964.
Repeat.
Okay. The number of Muslims recorded to have arrived in the Cape between 1655 and 1808 was 62,964. The Africans in the group was 26.4%. The Indonesians in the group was 22.7%. The Indian subcontinent people in the group were 25.9%. In this whole group, 846 were males and 422 were females. This is now the male and female Muslims, right? And according to Ahmad David, it is the free Muslim black, they will call the Vryheidsvaarten in the Cape, that it is this group that actually achieved in consolidating Islam in the Cape. Now, when we speak of the first form of sectarianism in South Africa, we speak of the hermeneutical religious sectarianism, which was seen with the arrival of Abu Bakr Effendi, who arrived in the 1st of January 1862. Effendi, according to Salim Ergun, Effendi is known as a distinguished yet controversial figure. So this tells you about the man himself, as we're speaking of him being the first indication of this part of hermeneutical sectarian difference. The main example of this hermeneutical sectarianism through Effendi is the crayfish debate, which according to him it was haram. This resulted into a conflict in a Shafi'i-predominated society to the extent that the matter was debated in Makkah. So the matter escalated and reached Makkah and it was debated there. And the petition was made against Effendi to be removed. So this is actually the act of discrimination I'm talking about. That based on the differences, you see now Hanafi and Shafi, different of crayfish, this guy will disagree with him, the issue goes to Makkah, they debate it, after Makkah, etc. This guy needs to move out. Discrimination, this act of discrimination. This is still evident today and in different ways, and we cannot go there. I only have, I don't know how many seconds remaining. And then...
No seconds.
Give one more example. You got another example?
No, I want to finish my topic, not the example.
Sheikh, you have taken up the most time so far. Even more than Ayub.
Can I...
You can close with one matter.
Okay, nonetheless, the existence of political religious sectarianism in South Africa is actually, it's an issue that is not so well documented. The religious system of Shia Sunni is not well documented in the sense where did it start, how did it start. And I'm not trying to deny the fact that there are many facts that I did not include. I did not mention the Indian Muslim migrants that came to the Durban, and also the Shia community that existed, came in settled in Durban, in Cape Town. It's not that I'm acknowledging that, it's just that I'm prioritizing because of time and everything, right? So the existence of this issue, the Shia Sunni issue, is not well documented. But the closest research, the closest actually reference that is made is that in the 1550s, the closest country to South Africa which was dominated by Shiaism was Comoros. That is as close as we can go. So 1550s, the Comoros was there. And then, okay, so according to, that is according to French, obviously. I will actually, there's a bibliography and all the books that I've used for the research. So I don't even know. Okay, let me just carry on. As for the visibility of Shiaism in South Africa, I'm speaking about Comoros in 1550s. Now we're speaking about South Africa. The visibility of Shiaism in South Africa is traced back to the Iranian Revolution in 1979. Now, a lot of people believe that, or they think, I don't know what to say, how to put it, but they are of the assumption that Shiaism came, found a home in South Africa. It just came, people came and then they spread Shiaism. But in reality, you find that the spread of Shiaism was done by the propaganda that was exercised in the 60s and the 70s by the dominant Muslim community then, which is obviously in Gauteng will be the Indian Muslim community, of telling the people, beware of Shiaism. So when they were spreading those beware of Shiaism, other people didn't become aware of Shiaism, as in they abstained from it. They made their own researches and they outreached to as Shias. That's how Shiaism was actually introduced, particularly in Gauteng. As we know that the first township that Shiaism came through in Gauteng was around the 70s. And it came through a self-taught black Muslims. They taught themselves how to read Arabic, etc. And then they outreached to the Iranians, etc. And then they brought Shiaism like that. So